Okay, guys, we have our quorum of 6, and now we've got 7, and so we're going to proceed first with Senate Bill 237. We've got Russell Ware from Department of Veteran Affairs, Military Families. Mr. Ware, why don't you come up? And also, I'll just call up Lynn Nash from the Maryland Military Coalition. Is Ms. Nash here? Okay, don't see Ms. Nash. So, Mr. Ware, you're going to be the lone presenter on this bill and the lone witness on this bill. So proceed, take the time you need to present Senate Bill 237.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Excellent. Let's see. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and distinguished members of the committee. I am Russ Ware, the Director of Cemeteries and Memorial Programs for the Maryland Department of Veterans and Military Families, and I'm here today to speak in favor of SB 237 as amended, which will allow National Guardsmen and members of the military reserves to be buried in our state veteran cemeteries, along with their eligible family members. It also removes the state residency requirement for veteran interments, which is necessary for our state to receive VA cemetery grants, as well as for the eligible dependents of out-of-state veterans. I served 25 years of active duty in the United States Air Force, and during that time I witnessed firsthand the incredible sacrifices made by National Guardsmen and reservists. Their dedication to our country is no less significant than that of active duty personnel, and it's time that we recognize their sacrifices by providing them with the honor of being buried in a state veteran cemetery. While the federal government provides burial rights for veterans, it does not currently extend the same privilege to guardsmen and reservists. This bill will share the privilege and will also remove the existing requirement for veterans to be current or previous Maryland state residents, a change that is necessary to meet the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs eligibility criteria for cemetery grants. This change ensures that all veterans who have served, regardless of where they call home, and their eligible dependents have access to burial benefits and places a greater focus on honoring their service rather than their residency. Passing this bill will not only generate revenue for the state cemetery program by regaining the ability to apply for federal cemetery expansion grants, but will also help sustain the system and ensure its continued operation for future generations. Also, the program will receive federal funding to cover the cost of out-of-state veteran burials. However, there will be a financial impact on state funds for the burials of out-of-state dependents. The cost of supporting the growth and expansion of the cemetery program by extending benefits to dependents of out-of-state veterans. By supporting this bill, Maryland demonstrates that we honor the service of all veterans, whether they served on active duty, the reserves, or the National Guard. I respectfully ask for a favorable report on SB 237 as amended, as it ensures that all who serve this nation are given the respect and dignity they have earned. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ware. Questions for Russ Ware? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Simonaire.
Thank you, Russ.
Hi.
Appreciate the bill. I support the bill. Just had a couple questions. I didn't see the amendments on our computer. Are they the same amendments that House Bill 138 passed third reader?
Yes, yes, they were the acknowledgement of the reserved NOA and national health.
Okay, so just a couple quick questions. I've been writing frantically, so I'll try to get on track here. Well, when you're dealing with the last section, I2, talking about cost, I noticed in F1 it says eligible spouse and dependent, and I1 says spouse and dependent, but in I2 it just says eligible dependent. Is that saying the spouses are not included? Is that the intent?
No, the intent is dependent as whole, meaning spouse, child, anybody who is eligible under the VA guidelines as posted.
Okay. I would recommend amendment because everywhere else it says spouse and dependent, and here it just says dependent.
I agree.
The other question I have, as far as trying to figure out what the department's target is for A5, when it talks about defining a veteran, it says an active duty armed forces, and then it goes and lists the PHS and NOAA and then reserve components. I understand the reserve components. I guess I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between 1 and 2 with armed forces and listing PHS and NOAA instead of just saying uniformed services.
I think the design of that answer was, or that statement was to include the NOA and OHA because that's part of what the VA actually allows. Right now, the VA will give funding for qualified veterans, those that served on active duty past their military training. Right now, anybody who served after 1981, September 1981, they have to serve at least 24 consecutive months in order to qualify for this veteran benefit.
Right.
Members of the NOA and National Health also have that eligibility. I think that was to try and include that, but I agree. I think there is some wording there that probably needs to be cleared up.
Okay.
I'm more of an all-inclusive instead of individual.
Right. And uniformed services includes all 8 branches, including NOAA and PHS. And you can go back and just look at, I think it's much cleaner just saying active duty and the uniformed services instead of trying to list those out. The other question, if I may, Chair, as far as so is the goal to add reservists, including National Guard, that have not been on active duty, to allow them to be buried in the cemetery as well, if I understand it correctly. Is that correct?
That is part of the goal of this bill.
So if I look at the definition of to qualify, this is in F, to qualify for a plot at our cemetery, it says you have to do 1 and 2. It's not or. And the first one is that you have to have, it meets the requirements of burial at the National Veterans Cemetery, which is active duty.
Yes.
And then it says N for a reserve component. So what that says is they have to be active duty in a reserve component. And from what I'm understanding, the goal is to be done. You don't have to have active duty. So what they have in F1 is they say you have to have the national qualification or an eligible spouse or dependent that meet this subsection. And I think you might want to put in the reserve component in there as an or, which would allow them not to have to be active duty. So, I mean, we can talk offline, but I don't think it's hitting its goal.
I agree with you.
And then the last point, as far as the cost goes, currently, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure, reserve components that are on active duty are allowed to be buried in our cemeteries currently. Is that correct?
Reserve components that
served on
have
active duty.
served active duty and met the requirements, there's a
180 days.
Exactly. And there's also National Guard also who have retired from the National Guard who met that qualification that are eligible to be buried in a national cemetery receive the federal funding for that benefit.
Right.
Those that do not, they do not receive it, and therefore they're also not eligible to be buried in a national cemetery. But there was a public law that was posted about 2 years ago that allowed the ability for state cemeteries to have guardsmen and reservists be buried in their state cemetery, veteran cemetery, without penalty.
Right.
But we do not get any funding for it.
Right. And so I'm just asking to your intent in I, where you talk about cost, because it basically says a veteran and eligible spouse and dependent, basically their cost is paid for, but a reserve component, they have to pick up the cost.
That is correct.
But current law picks up the cost of reserve components who have served on active duty. So are we taking a benefit away from them?
No, that actually goes back to if they've qualified to be buried in a national cemetery, which those that have served and met the requirement on active duty, then their benefit is already paid for through the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
Those that do not will have to provide the funding.
And then my very last point, talking about the residence requirements. The way I read it is, if you're a veteran, you don't need the residence requirement, but if you're a reserve component, you still need residence requirement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I guess the same question goes there. In F2, it says if a veteran is a member of a reserve component, they have to have residency requirement.
That is correct.
But a reserve component could be an active duty, currently can be buried in our state, and this would seem to say that all reserve components have to have residency requirement. So you just, again, may want to check on that active duty portion, because I don't think that's what the department's trying to do.
No, we are not. I think what would make that clearer is that if we state that those that qualify to be buried in a national cemetery do not require state residency.
Right.
I think that might clear it up.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
I would agree.
Okay. We do have Lynn Nash, we've located you, so before we take questions, why don't you testify? We're going to put you on the 2.5-minute clock, though.
Oh,
so, okay.
absolutely.
So again, 2.5 minutes.
So Captain Lynn Nash from the Maryland Military Association. I'm a United States Public Health Service officer who also served 11 years in the Army. So I have 2 DD-214s. So the reason I'm here is to ensure that thank yous, that the language is clear and consistent. My job on the coalition has been to represent public health. I've got 1,398 officers who reside here, 8 ready reservists, and about 7,000 retirees here in the state. My job is to represent them, as well as the NOAA Corps, which is much smaller because we serve on active duty. Yes, I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, but I also did 9/11, Ebola, Fukushima, the first bird flu, sometimes my public health service was more perilous than me sitting in an evac hospital in Scud Alley. So my point is, our officers work really hard. Right now, NOAA is down on the Potomac helping. We need to ensure that our veterans who qualify may be buried in our state cemeteries. The recommendations for amendment passed on the House side. It's gone to second reading and passed. I would hope that you will give us a favorable report with amendments. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Captain Nash or Mr. Ware? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes bill hearing. Oh, sorry, Vice Chair Kagan, I apologize.
Lynn, I just want to say it's good to see you down here. It's good to see a constituent and someone who's deeply involved in our election systems. So
Yes.
I always see her at the polls working and showing yet another area of customer service, public service. So thank you for all that you do and all that you will do.
Never stop serving.
You're amazing.
And
Thank you.
today's cookies are ginger and oatmeal scotchies, and they'll be back in your kitchen.
Very good, okay. That's not going to necessarily get you anywhere on this bill, I just want to make clear. Okay, any additional questions? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on
Thank you.
Senate Bill 237. We're going to next go to a former member of this committee, Senator Karen Lewis Young, for Senate Bill 175. Welcome back. I'm going to call your panel.
Thank you so much.
Michael Fleming from Frederick County. We've got Sarah Laird. We've got the County Executive of Frederick County, Jessica Fitzwater, here in the House. And then finally, Craig Matthews, Howard County Fire and Rescue. Those are the 4 panelists, so we're going to start with you all. So Senator, you take the time you need, and the County Executive can speak. Everybody else, we're going to have to put you on a 2.5-minute clock, okay? So we'll start with you, Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Committee, good to be back here. I have missed you. Not those 332 bills, but I miss you.
342.
Oh, 342 and increasing by the day. This bill may sound familiar to you. Corrugated stainless steel tubing safety improvements. Corrugated stainless steel tubing, which I will refer to as CSST for short, is a building material used to deliver natural gas and propane in buildings. It's vulnerable to malfunctioning when encountering electricity through lightning or short circuits, and this results in fires and explosions. It's also vulnerable to wear and tear that results in punctures. Since 2018, the state has experienced 3 fatalities, 2 firefighters and 1 civilian, as well as over 30 destructive fires caused by lightning-induced failures of CSST. Now, I want to depart for a moment and tell you why I'm here today. One of those fatalities occurred in Frederick County, and the widow of Battalion Chief Joshua Laird is here on the panel today at a memorial event for her deceased husband. I said to her, I will do everything I can to try to prevent this from happening again to anyone else. And so when I shared this story with my dear friend, Senator Brooks, he said, you want to take the bill, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. So thank you again for being so gracious. It does mean a lot to me and my community. A little bit more background. In 2016, the National Association of State Fires, fire marshals, along with the Fire Service Membership Council and the International Code Council, voted unanimously to recommend the product standard LC 1027 be adopted as the minimum requirement to improve the safety of CSST. However, this bill has been amended from that with no reference to LC 1027, requiring that CSST sold or installed in Maryland simply withstands 36 coulombs of electrical arcing charged by an electrical arcing test. 36 coulombs would protect against somewhere between 80 and 90% of all lightning strikes. It would also establish a fine of up to $1,000 to ensure that the statute is enforceable. In addition to CSST products compliant with LC 1027, black iron and copper pipes are viable alternatives. By requiring the CSST to withstand 36 coulombs, this legislation could potentially ensure that all manufacturers are able to create products using the clear metrics and hopefully addressing a competitive issue. Few more points I'd like to make. CCST has been a product of choice to deliver natural gas and propane in residential and commercial buildings for the past 20 years. In 2022, we passed legislation that banned the use of first-generation non-arc resistant CSST. However, there was a loophole. The legislation failed to ban the sale, distribution, and transfer of the product. So you or I, as private individuals, could go to a hardware store and buy it. And we're attempting to correct that. Second-generation products are minimally better. While arc-resistant CSST is a safer product than non-arc-resistant CSST, there are still potential safety issues. Arc-resistant CSST is only sufficient for 4.5 coulombs, while the average lightning strike is between 15 and 24 coulombs and can even be higher than that. This means that even arc-resistant CSST is highly vulnerable to malfunction, and higher safety standards are needed. While there is currently no formal system to track and report CSST-related fires, we know there have been at least a minimum of 30 in Maryland since 2018. Even if a fire doesn't result in a fatality, it's extremely traumatic and it can negatively impact family or business emotionally and financially for years. Finally, we know that this danger is getting worse by the day. Our weather grows increasingly severe every year. According to research at the University of California, lightning strikes are projected to increase by more than 50% by the end of the century. Before closing, I want to address some potential oppositional issues you may hear from what I observed both in the testimony and the House hearing. Would this legislation create a monopoly? Currently, several products are available to withstand 36 coulombs of electrical arcing charge. Any manufacturer could create a product that meets the requirements as they have electrical arcing charge tests that are readily available, and this legislation allows for the manufacturer to certify their product as compliant by providing a material certificate that demonstrates that the product has been proven to withstand at least 36 coulombs of electrical arcing charge. Additionally, to ensure that the industry has the flexibility in meeting these safety standards, the amended language of the bill no longer requires CSST products to meet the LC 1027 testing criteria referred to in the 2024 proposed legislation. This bill does not apply to existing buildings. The bill is prospective. The requirements would only apply to new construction and renovations in existing buildings. So if a building is already built with CSST, it would not be required to retrofit to meet this 36 coulomb electrical arcing charge requirement. We also pushed out implementation to October 1st, 2027. So this would allow manufacturers to innovate, to use current supply, and to meet the new requirement. Current alternatives include steel, iron, and copper piping. You might also hear that CSST is arc resistant and properly bonded and therefore perfectly safe. We know that, and we have the data, several significant fires have occurred from arc resistant CSST. One final item you might hear is current law did not ban yellow CSST, and that's what we really should concentrate on. Well, that's partially true. The 2022 law, and I think I referenced this already, prohibited the use of non-arc resistant CSST, but it didn't prohibit sale or distribution. So we need to close that loophole, but since we have seen arc-resistant CSST malfunction too, we do need higher standards than just arc-resistant and properly bonded. In conclusion, this bill addresses the loophole in the 2022 bill and increases the safety standard based on the research regarding lightning strikes. Captain Matthews will discuss the fire risk of both yellow and black CSST. Mike Fleming will handle the explanation of what CSST is and how other products can be used and the inspection of this aspect of the issue. Specific standards do not exist in any edition of International Fuel and Gas Code. However, Maryland Labor advises that a similar standard is referenced under the International Code Council Evaluation Service, which provides technical evaluation of building products, components, methods, and materials. We all know Maryland has historically been a leader in protecting our citizens from health, and safety risks with a higher standard. And I encourage that today. We must put fire safety measures ahead of protective financial interests. And with that, I'd like to pass the microphone on to our county exec, who will tell you why it's so important to her as our county leader.
Okay, County Executive Fitzwater.
Thank you very much, Senator Lewis Young, and thank you, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee for the opportunity to speak on this very important bill, SB 175. For the record, I am Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater, and I want to thank Senator Lewis Young and Senator Brooks for sponsoring this important bill. And as you just heard from Senator Lewis Young, this bill aims to increase the safety standards for corrugated stainless steel tubing. You'll hear from this panel the current testing requirements for CSST are simply inadequate and are putting the lives of our firefighters, our first responders, and our residents at risk. Since 2018, the state of Maryland has experienced 3 fatalities because of fires caused by lightning-induced failure of CSST. And as you heard, this issue became deeply personal to Frederick County when a CSST-related fire in 2021 resulted in the line-of-duty death of Frederick County Battalion Chief Josh Laird. So today you'll hear from Sarah, his widow, who has been an incredible advocate for this issue and many other critical issues facing first responders and their families, despite the challenges that she and her daughters have been facing. And you'll hear from other witnesses who have both experience and expertise on this issue. Since the loss of Battalion Chief Josh Laird, the research around CSST's vulnerability to malfunction has piled up. Academic institutions like UC Berkeley and MIT, as well as the Department of Energy and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, have invested significant resources into researching the impact of lightning on the safety of this product. This research has truly highlighted the need for higher safety standards. As Senator Lewis Young mentioned, the amended bill will set a floor for the testing of this product to ensure that all manufacturers have the opportunity to develop a product that will meet the regulations this body determines are appropriate. I have staff from our Division of Planning and Permitting, Mike, here to discuss how local governments can assist with implementing these safer standards through our permitting and inspection processes. As local and state government, we truly do have a responsibility to our constituents, including our first responders, to adopt laws and policies that ensure the safety of our communities. And adopting stronger safety standards for that energy systems in our buildings is one simple way that we can uphold that responsibility. So thank you so much for your consideration of this very important bill, SB 175, and I urge the committee to advance this bill with a favorable report. And I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Okay, thank you. And each of you are going to be on a 2.5-minute clock, okay? So we'll go next to Sarah Laird.
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Keegan, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Laird. My husband, Battalion Chief Josh Laird, was killed in a fire caused by failure of corrugated stainless steel tubing under lightning strike conditions. My daughters and I will carry this loss with us forever. My oldest will graduate from high school in a few months with a picture of her dad hanging from her cap. My youngest will get her driver's permit next month, but it'll be Chief Co and her father's co-workers that are teaching her how to drive. Since my husband's death 3 years ago, I've documented over 30 CSST lightning fires in Maryland, though I know there are many more. There's no system to track and report these fires. So to document them has required many hours of searching news stories and court records. One of these fires occurred just as the legislative session was ending last year. On the morning of April 2nd, 2024, in Mount Airy, Maryland, lightning struck a tree and traveled to the adjacent home, causing the CSST to fail, resulting in a concealed fire above the basement ceiling and below the first floor. When I spoke to the homeowner in September, they were still not back in their home. They were also shocked to learn that though new products were installed in their home, meet current code, they offered no greater protection and that they were still at risk. Fortunately, the family was home when the fire started and firefighters arrived quickly. There were no injuries, but the outcome could have been very different. The reason we haven't had more fatalities in Maryland since 2018 is not because there has not been opportunity, but it's been because of the work of first responders who are well-trained, but the potential is there. Concerns related to CSST failures have been well documented and prevalent nationwide since the 2000s. Almost every industry in this country has had to evolve and improve safety standards. Some have done it voluntarily, while others have got to be compelled by legislation. I am asking you to leverage the power entrusted to you by the citizens of the state of Maryland to compel the industry to do better by providing a favorable report for SB 175, ensuring that the trust Marylanders put in your hands keeps them and their families safe.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Craig Matthews. I'm a captain with Howard County Fire and Rescue, currently assigned to the Fire Investigation Division. Over the course of my tenure of being assigned to fire investigations, I've investigated several hundred fires. A dozen of these fires have been related to lightning-induced failure of CSST. We have seen a variety of the original CSST, which is referenced as the yellow, as well as the black. This is the non-arc resistive. This is the arc resistive. You're going to hear potentially from the opposition today that they've not seen nor heard of the arc resistive CSST failing. Well, I'm here to show you that this stuff fails. This was from a house fire in Ellicott City, where over the length of 100 feet, there were 6 arc holes in this arc resistive CSST. We have seen this time and time again. I led the investigation into the line of duty death of Lieutenant Nathan Flynn, and I assisted with the investigation of Battalion Chief Josh Laird. That was probably the hardest investigations I've ever had to do, and I don't want to do this again. You know how hard it is to walk a widow around a house fire and show them where their husband had died, all because of a faulty product? We have the ability to make changes now, and I urge you all to consider moving this bill forward. We as fire investigators, we use the scientific method when we're conducting these investigations. We investigate by collecting as much data as we possibly can. We find the area of origin. From there, we start to look at potential causes within that area of origin. And then we start rolling out by disproving some of these ignition sources. And then we ultimately come down to our final conclusion. And in every one of these instances, the CSST is routed through interstitial space, which once it's induced with lightning and energized, it arcs to a closed piece of metallic. It then creates a hole in the CSST, releasing the fugitive gas, simultaneously igniting that fugitive gas. That is the first fuel ignited. The second fuel ignited is the structure of that house, which in both of the line of duty deaths, it was an hour from lightning strike till both of these firefighters fell through the floor and were trapped in basements. Time and time again, we are losing several millions of dollars in property damage as well as memories that cannot be replaced. So I urge you to move this bill forward.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to our final witness on this panel.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Fleming. I'm the Chief Plumbing and Gas Inspector for the Frederick County Government. I am certified by the state of Maryland as a Master Plumbing and Gas Inspector. And I also am ICC.
Sir, yeah, could you put that mic a little closer? Thank you.
Can you hear me now? I'm also an ICC Residential Combination Inspector. This is important because the state of Maryland has adopted the ICC standards. The ICC adopted codes establish the minimum required standards for building construction and safety. But the state and local governments can amend the building codes to be stricter than the minimum standards. Corrugated stainless steel is a flexible piping material used to transport fuel gas throughout buildings. The International Fuel and Gas Code section 403.5 states that CSST shall be listed under the LC1 CSA 6.26 standard. This standard is only tested to protect against an indirect lightning strike of 4.5 coulombs of energy. The 2022 legislation passed by this body requires that all CSST used in Maryland to be arc resistant. This law did not, however, ban the sale or distribution of this product, so non-compliant CSST can still be purchased in the state of Maryland. While closing this loophole is important, some black arc-resistant CSST is still vulnerable to malfunctions from electrical arcing. The state should require only CSST that has been tested to withstand the strength of a typical lightning strike to be sold and used in the state of Maryland. You may hear from our opposition that this change should go to the International Code Council for review. But sending it to ICC review wouldn't be till the 2030 code. The state of Maryland would not adopt that code until 2033 at the earliest. During that time, this unsafe product will continue to be available for purchase by consumers, putting lives at risk. As an inspector, I see firsthand how the access of this product and the lack of clear guidance from the manufacturers presents dangers to the safety and welfare of consumers and the public. The manufacturer does not advise or does not tell you that you have to be licensed to install this product. So I'm asking for this legislation to eliminate the sale and distribution of this product.
Okay, thank you, sir. So any questions for our sponsor, the county executive, or the three witnesses on the panel? We're going to start with Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I guess it's good either to Chief Coe or Captain Craig. How often do you see CSST failures, causing fire or explosions?
So in my time assigned to the Fire Investigation Division, I've seen dozens. Just in Howard County in 2024, I believe that we had 8 CSST failures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Do you know the strength of the lightning that caused that struck the home in the case of the two chief that we lost?
So in the Howard County line of duty death of Lieutenant Nathan Flynn,
Yes.
that lightning strike, per the lightning strike data report, indicated that the lightning that had struck the nearby tree of the structure and transferred the energy to the structure was 64 kiloamps, which was 3 times the size of any other lightning strike in that area that evening. And as far as the lightning strike in Frederick County that struck the house that killed Battalion Chief Josh Laird, that was 45 kiloamps.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any additional questions? Senator Hester.
Thank you very much. I was just curious if somebody could talk a bit about the amendment to the bill and whether how it would be tested and why that's required, and if that would help to prevent future fires.
Yeah, I can do it. I've spent a lot of time educating myself over the last couple of years. There are multiple labs across the country that are able to test products to ensure that they are meeting that level of safety. As far as, will 36 columns prevent all failure in the future? It probably won't prevent all failure, but it's going to take us a long way from where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Senator.
In addition to the amendment, there are some changes since last year. So we're also trying to address the competitive issue by not limiting it to a specific product standard. We wiped out the LC 1027 because that was too restrictive. So now just a standard that from research would protect against about 80 to 90% And the other thing is extending the timeline, because one of the things we heard was this is a monopoly. By making this recommendation, it's a monopoly. And we felt by extending the timeline, and we see this kind of issue in other situations, you give a large variety of producers the ability to not only deplete their current stock, but to be creative and develop a new product that meets new standards. So in addition to the amendment, I wanted to address the changes from the 2024 bill.
Another thing you may hear from the opposition related to the 36 columns and the testing is they like to say that that came from just one manufacturer, but they're being very disingenuous with you, and that the current standard that they're used came from one of them. And that's the way this industry works, and it has worked. Additionally, one of the individuals that has been testifying against us sits on the board of the... He's the chair member. He's the chair member of the board that makes the determination of what they're going to change, what the standard's going to be. And if you go look, I've pulled the records, I can show you the minutes. They are voting members of all of these groups. So there's a person that's going to testify shortly that's going to tell you, oh, Maryland, you shouldn't do this. You should wait till the ICC does it and we should get it in the code. It's not going to get in the code. They're voting members of those committees.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, I want to thank the full panel, and we do have a couple more favorable in-person witnesses I'm going to call up. Oh, I'm sorry, did you? Okay, we're going to call Celeste Flynn. Is Celeste here?
Unfortunately had a sick child.
Okay. Going to go to Jeff. Okay, I think that's the extent of the in-person testimony. Favorable. I'm going to next call. We've got a panel of unfavorables. I'm going to. What? It's information only, though, right? That person's okay. Okay, before we go to the in-person unfavorable, we do have somebody who's signed up just for information purposes only, virtually. Avi Smith Rose is. Okay, is Avi Smith Rose, are you there?
This is Lisa Rild. I am in place of Avi Smith Rose from the International Code Council.
Okay, so you've got 2.5 minutes. You've signed up simply for information purposes only, not for or against. So you've got 2.5 minutes, and you can proceed, okay?
Okay, thank you. I am Lisa Rild, and I work as a staff member for the International Code Council, specifically in the plumbing, mechanical, and fuel gas group. I am a director of technical resources there, and we specifically cover all the aspects of the fuel gas code and how it gets implemented, and educating building officials on what's included in that. I am here to say that I would ask that you not ignore the process that's in place, which we already have, which is both the codes and standards process, where we, through a consensus process, develop codes through consensus, and we develop standards through consensus. As has already been mentioned, the fuel gas code that ICC writes, as well as all the other fuel gas codes within the country, do reference a consensus standard, which is the ANSI LC1 CSA 6.26 standard. It does currently have a requirement of 4.5 coulombs. To just add 36 coulombs to the state legislature is not through a consensus process, and it is not protecting the rest of the country who is also following a fuel gas code. If you if you go to the committee that writes this standard and is formed through testing laboratories, manufacturers, subject matter experts, they will, through that process, come to a resolution of an appropriate number as to whether the 4.5 or 36 is correct number to use, or somewhere in between, or some completely different number. And that's often done through actual testing process. I would argue that the number of 36 that has come out in this legislation is solely based on the LC 1027 standard that was previously referenced. I realize that's been amended out, but at this point, I would suggest that some testing be done to see what the appropriate level is, and trust the process that we have in place through codes and standards development. There are committees and consensus for a reason, and I would ask that you follow that process. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question from Senator Hester.
Is she still there?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. I was just curious if you could just enlighten us. I mean, you wanted to share the process with us. What are you doing right now to address this issue? Are you currently testing products? Do you have a work group on this? And we heard, you know, that the chair of the private company was on the board. Could you just enlighten us to how you make these decisions and who's making them?
Sure. The International Fuel Gas Code is amended every 3 years. We're in the process of amending it right now. But the International Fuel Gas Code references the ANSI LC1 CSA 6.26 standard, which is a consensus standard. The International Code Council does not control what content is in that standard. We don't vote on that. What we do is to decide whether that standard will be referenced or not. And that standard has been referenced in the International Fuel Code for some time, as well as all the other fuel gas codes, because there are a couple other fuel gas codes that are published by other organizations besides ICC. So the real heart of you know, the fuel gas code references that standard, but the content of that standard is developed by the consensus committee.
If I might, just excuse me, like, you're not really answering the question. The question is, what are you specifically doing about the fact that we've got firefighters like dying because the houses are burning down? Like, are you acknowledging that this is an issue, and is there a work group or something that's dealing with this? Because you're just telling me you're following a standard, but there seems to be a problem. So I'd just like to know what you're doing proactively.
Well, we're actively involved in the development of standards, in monitoring what's being done and making sure that any standard that's relevant is put into the code.
So you cannot tell me that you're addressing this issue specifically. There is nobody who's like tasked with like looking at this issue and saying, you just said we should do some testing. Like, are you actually doing testing to see if the standard is still fit for purpose?
This standard isn't a standard that is developed by ICC. We develop other standards. This particular standard does not belong to ICC.
It doesn't seem like you're able to answer the question about whether you guys care about the firefighters that are dying, but thank you very much.
Okay, additional questions for our virtual witness? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to a panel of the, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, you're going to have to, we can't seem to get you off of this portal, so can you remove yourself so we can move on with the hearing? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the unfavorables. Brad Rifkin signed up unfavorable. Jonathan Sargent here. We've got Bill Castelli, Ashley Andrus, and I think that's the extent of the unfavorable in-person testimony. Although I see Jamie Gregory signed up here. Jamie, okay, we got a panel. We're good. Okay, so we've got 5 seats, 5 panelists, all signed up unfavorable. And who wants to lead off?
I will, sir.
Okay. And each of you are going to be on the 2.5-minute clock, okay? Okay.
Chair Feldman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Jamie Gregory, representing Omega Flex, one of the manufacturers. In this hearing, you will hear about the distinction between yellow-jacketed CSST and black-jacketed. The fire incidents referenced in both Howard and Frederick counties involved structures that both contained yellow-jacketed CSST that were not bonded and grounded. The legislation passed during the 2022 session attempted to ban yellow CSST in Maryland. However, it did not accomplish that objective. Instead of explicitly banning yellow, it stated that non-arc resistant jacketed corrugated stainless steel tubing may not be used. Yellow jacketed CSST has some arc resistance. The currently recognized national standard of LC1 has produced the higher resistant black CSST. SB 175 is introduced will require a testing criterion that was designed for one product known as LC 1027 or 36 coulombs of resistance, which is also part of LC 1027. LC 1027 is not a national consensus standard developed by one of the standards development organizations. It has been considered by both the CSA group as a national standard and by the National Fire Protection Association for recognition in the Fuel Gas Code. Both organizations rejected it. And it is incorrect to state that the ICC unanimously approved LC 1027. LC 1027 has been discussed and considered in communities and legislatures across the country. No jurisdiction currently has it in their code. In 2022, the Senate Finance Committee considered adding LC 1027 and decided not to. The 2022 session, after the session, the Public Service Commission released a report highlighting the need for proper bonding and grounding. In 24, the legislation to require LC 1027 in Maryland was considered and not moved out of ENT. Now in 2025, this bill attempts again to directly implement LC 1027 or indirectly by requiring 36 coulombs. This again is an attempt to circumvent the development process of national consensus codes and standards. If passed, it will reduce public safety by weakening that process. We ask for your unfavorable report.
Okay, we'll just go down the aisle, down the panel. Sir, tell us who you are.
My name's Jonathan Sargent. I'm Director of Codes and Standards for OmegaFlex, which is a manufacturer of corrugated tubing products, the primary of which is CSST. I speak today in opposition to Senate Bill 175 on the grounds that the bill as written and as amended would reduce safety by failure to reference the LC1 National Consensus Standard. An amendment has been proposed, which you've heard about, to remove the reference to 1027 listing criteria, leaving the 36 coulomb rating from the document in the bill. Unfortunately, this does not improve the bill. It actually does just the opposite. Without a test criteria, the 36 coulomb number is meaningless. In truth, the standard, the 1027 standard, does not contain a 36 coulomb test either. It contains several tests, several waveforms of energy, one of which is 10 and one of which is 26. So collectively, they regard that as a 36 coulomb rating. Without a test procedure, the 36 coulomb number is meaningless. If you take nothing away from my testimony, please take that away. The CSST industry arrived at the 4.5 coulomb test in the LC1 standard, along with the test regimen to test to that, based on rigorous lightning testing and forensic analysis of perforated CSST. The standard, along with the 1027 standard, are both addressing indirect lightning strikes. Neither standard, I'm sorry, that's not a standard. The listing criteria 1027 nor LC1 addresses direct lightning strikes for the simple reason that in your house, within a building, you don't get direct lightning strikes on the CSST piping. You get indirect strikes. Through forensic analysis, we've determined that it's typically a 1 to 2 coulomb range of energy. And out of conservatism, we put 4.5 coulombs into the LC1 standard. So it's at least double what the expected energy on the tubing is. ICC 1027, as we covered, is not a consensus document. It's a document that's bought and paid for by one manufacturer, and only one manufacturer meets it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Rifkin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Brad Rifkin on behalf of ASC Engineering, its subsidiary Ward Manufacturing. Ashley Andrews from Ward is here at my request. Look, we're deeply sympathetic to the incidents that took place. Honestly, every single person up here is saddened by it. But the bill, as introduced and with the proposed amendments, is deeply flawed. The bill as introduced includes a testing criteria, as you've heard, that is bought and paid for by a single manufacturer, which, if they chose, on a whim, if you pass this bill, could potentially amend that listing criteria at any second and go around your purview. And to the credit of the good senator from Frederick, they are proposing to remove that listing criteria. That's well and good, but it's the chicken or the egg. You can remove the listing criteria and put in this new floor of 36 coulombs, which, by the way, is the effect of LC 1027, but without any standardization or uniformity or testing, 36 is just a number. Why not 18? Why not 12? Why not 1,000? It's just a number. It doesn't make any sense. And in addition, as it relates to real data, I think it's important that this committee and the House committee, which I'm sure you will, consider real data before upending an industry. Now, we hear there are 30 incidents since 2018. Do we have any information about those incidents? Was the black perforated tubing that was just shown to you, was that bonded and grounded and installed properly? Those are really important questions. And I think if we're going to have a discussion about upending an industry, having that real information is pertinent. Otherwise, where is the latent problem in the industry? I think, Mr. Gregory may have said, or I missed it, the CSST that was in the homes in Frederick and in Howard that led to the really unfortunate situation, that was yellow perforated CSST that wasn't bonded or grounded. So for those reasons, we respectfully request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tell us who you are.
My name is Ashley Andrus, and I'm speaking on behalf of Ward Manufacturing, the manufacturer of WardFlex Max corrugated stainless steel tubing. The Maryland legislature should reject this attempt to impose the proprietary product listing, LC 1027, in place of the National Consensus Standard, CSA LC1 for CSST. The LC1 standard dictates strict testing and performance requirements for arc-resistant CSST jackets that prove it will provide a high degree of resistance to electrical arcing caused by lightning. This is why the National Fuel Gas Code and the International Fuel Gas Code only recognize the use of CSST in accordance with the LC1 standard. Arc-resistant CSST made under the enhanced LC1 requirements can meet the expected levels of electrical energy that actually occur within the piping system of a structure. Similar attempts to the one being made today have been rejected in Oklahoma, Iowa, and Texas. Proposals have also been rejected by the International Fuel Gas Code and the International Residential Code to only recognize LC 1027 in lieu of LC1 as well. LC 1027 is not an accepted national consensus standard that was developed as part of a fair and open standards development process as defined by the American National Standards Institute. It is a proprietary listing criteria specifically developed for a single manufacturer's patented design. The intention of a listing criteria is to allow for evaluation of emerging products until they can be covered by an existing national standard or a new one is created. Imposing the terms of Senate Bill 175 within the state of Maryland creates a monopoly and sets up a restraint of trade arguments. The concern here has already been mitigated with the signing of House Bill 1052 in 2022. In conclusion, piping systems installed in Maryland should be specified by existing national consensus standards, and the bill should receive unfavorable report.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Castelli, and then we'll take questions. We'll start with Senator Hester. Mr. Castelli, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill Castelli, also on behalf of Ward Manufacturing. And what I wanted to address, too, is the point that Ashley just made, and that there was questions about, evolving the products in the future. LC1 has evolved through the code-making process. The black-jacketed performs at 2 times the level of the yellow-jacketed product. So the industries and all of the players in that industry, through competition, are constantly evolving their products, making them safer. If you were to adopt an LC 1027 standard or 36 Coulomb, which only one manufacturer meets right now and has patents that would be violated if other people tried to design their products the way that person does, that company does, then you would effectively give one manufacturer the ability to do that. And I don't think, competition creates innovation, creates moving forward. Granting a monopoly position to one company, I don't think helps that process. If Maryland were to adopt and improve upon the legislation that was passed before to literally ban the yellow product, that was the product that was in both of those fires, ban the yellow product, it would be the first state in the country to do so. And that is something that I don't think anybody up here would oppose. So for that reasons, we encourage an unfavorable report.
Okay, we're going to take questions. We're going to start with Senator Hester, then we'll go to Senator Carozza.
Thank you. I guess I have 3 questions. The first, I think I heard somebody said that the LC1, I guess the question is, does the LC1 have to be bonded and grounded? That is my first question. My second question is, can anybody point to like something that is currently going on with this consensus standard to make the product kind of better? I mean, I know you said that it has evolved, but I'd like to know what's going on like right now, like who's dealing with this at the national level. And then for each of you, from Omega, ASC Engineering, and Ward Manufacturing, I'd like to know, 1, has your product ever been involved in a fatal fire? 2, how many court cases have you settled out of court? And 3, how many dollars were paid out of that settlement?
I'll take the last one. I'll take the first 2.
I can respond to 1 and 2. Our legal department could respond to number 3, but I don't have that data. I apologize. Sorry, I got confused. What was the first?
Bonding and grounding.
Oh, bonding and grounding, yes. Bonding and grounding was added to the LC1 standard. It's also in the code, and it's also in all the manufacturer's installation instructions. So yellow-jacketed CSST is supposed to be bonded and grounded, and the point to that is, not to get too technical, you want to create an equipotential situation on the different metallic systems within the house, and that discourages arcing. The energy on the tubing isn't the problem, it's how the energy gets there. It's arcing from one system to another that creates the issue. So bonding does mitigate that issue. So yeah, the LC1 standard has had bonding and grounding in it for quite some time, and so is the fuel gas code.
And then do you want to do the second one on the code process and how it's dynamic?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The LC1 standard is a dynamic process. It's generally the technology. We developed, OmegaFlex developed the arc-resistant product. And we did it, and we stopped selling the yellow-jacketed product in the U.S. Because it was a safer product. So yes, the industry does move forward. We're still working on better products.
Getting back to us on that, I mean, I thought I heard somebody said that the black CSST is safe if properly grounded, and the LC1 that has been adopted doesn't require bonding and grounding. So if you could get back to the committee in writing along with the response from your lawyer, that would be great. Thank you.
I can actually, I was going to address your third question. As far as events, I can tell you that in Maryland, the way the manufacturers find out whether their product has been involved is through insurance fire investigations. And I can tell you that OmegaFlex has not been contacted by any insurance companies involving black CSST in the state of Maryland.
Do you do yellow or just black?
We don't sell yellow in the
Okay,
US.
so how about black in the entire United States?
I only have the answer for Maryland.
Okay, well, we'll take it offline. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to Senator Carozza, then we'll go back to Senator Washington. Just this question. Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first, want to acknowledge the death of Battalion Chief Joshua Laird and Sarah Laird, your advocacy. But I think what we want to do here as a committee, as policymakers, is to focus on the safety issue. So everything we do, whether as elected officials, should come back to public safety. And this question is more directed to Mr. Rifkin, because you, I think, know you're very skilled in translating if we don't know all the codes and materials, and we're not expert. I'm not an engineer. But I wanted to better understand the past actions that have been taken that improved the situation that we're dealing with today. And you mentioned possible future actions that could be taken to improve safety. So if it wasn't this bill or this bill as written, what we could do to improve safety and address the reality in front of us.
Sure. As to improving safety today, what I would suggest is, based on legislation that you all passed in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, that predates my engagement on the issue, but is to actually take yellow-jacketed CSST, which is the version 1 of CSST, off the market today in Maryland. The bill that you passed didn't do that. The language was vague. So if you go to a Lowe's or a Home Depot today, you will see yellow-jacketed CSST there for your purchase. So if it's about, from the proponent's perspective, saving a life, we believe that if it's bonded and grounded and it's properly installed, it's safe. But if it's about taking the product off of the market that was in the homes in Frederick and Howard, then do it. And all of us up here have agreed that that's something that should be done. We've been told by proponents, from someone who's speaking on behalf of the proponents, that, well, that would be status quo. I would argue that removing it from shelves and getting it off the market by passing a bill specifically saying it can't be in Maryland is not status quo. That is a change.
Can we do
that a little bit?
Okay, briefly, go on, sir. Go on.
Sorry. The fact that it didn't prohibit sale of it was one problem. Another problem was it didn't define arc resistant. It's important to reference the LC1 standard, which in section 5.14 tells you what is arc resistant. Yellow-jacketed CSST has an arc resistance to it. It's about 25 volts, 25,000 volts it'll resist. Black is better. So I would recommend referencing the standard for arc resistance as well.
Okay, Senator Washington, did you have a question? We're good? Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 175. We're going to next go to Senator Fulton, who's patiently been waiting over there in the corner. Senator Fulton, Senate Bill 145. And the only witness I've got signed up in person is Rebecca Snyder. And Rebecca, why don't you come up and take a seat next to Senator Fulton on Senate Bill 145. Senator, take the time you need to present the bill.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Vice Chair, esteemed colleagues, and members of EEE. For the record, William Fulton, Senator for Frederick County District 4. This is a very simple, common sense bill. I know you guys are going to want to move this thing right after I'm finished talking. It just makes sense sometimes, you know. Senate Bill 145, the Public Information Act, personnel records of elected officials and Joint Ethics Committee records. In short, a few years ago, this body felt in its wisdom that those who serve our communities should have their records be able to be reviewed at any time by anyone in the public. Those are the law enforcers of our communities. And I think in standing with that same type of mindset, we also have people in, I'll just say, sometimes we have bad actors in different areas of our society, and sometimes those are elected officials. And sometimes those officials take or do inappropriate things that, because of ethics laws, gets investigated, whether it's an assault on a female in their office or other things of that nature. It gets investigated, it gets swept under the rug, and it's never put out for the public eyes to know what happened of their elected official. I think that's appalling. I think all elected officials should have these personnel records and these type of investigations, administrative investigations, open for public purview as an important step in maintaining and enhancing our transparency of government. This would only cover any record related to an administrative or criminal investigation of misconduct by an elected official or a person appointed to fill that office once the Ethics Commission has closed its file. I do want to point out that, you know, Howard County, I saw that they had a letter of not support, their school system, and that this is otherwise not a matter of public concern. I think any act by any member of this body or any elected official is absolutely an act of public concern. We should all be concerned with what's happening behind these closed doors, especially if it's inappropriate or egregious conduct. The one point that was made by, additionally on their letter, was about the anonymity of the person submitting the complaint. That's a simple solution to that, is just make that we have those parts of those records when they are requested, that complainant be shielded from any public, any potential ramifications from them lodging this complaint. Because what we don't want to do is deter that transparency and those victims coming forward. And with that, this level, again, this brings it into the same line as what we do with our law enforcers, and I think it's only appropriate that our lawmakers should have the same standard apply to them. And the public has a right to know the actions of our public officials in office. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over. Thank you for coming.
Okay, Ms. Snyder, you're going to be on the 2.5 minute clock. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee. I'm Rebecca Snyder. I'm the executive director of the Maryland Delaware DC Press Association, and we do support Senator Folden's bill, which has been heard. Maybe this is the third time? Third time. Okay.
Third time is charm, Mr. Chair.
And we do believe that this is an important step forward in transparency. You know, when we look at, and there is, once the investigation is closed, oftentimes those results are made public, but we do feel that lawmakers and elected officials have one of the highest burdens of, or not a burden of public trust, but carry one of the highest levels of public trust. And so we feel like it's important to ensure that the PIA can be used to look at the closed investigations to see if there's patterns. Not all investigations result in an issuance of discipline, but we do want to know, and I think it's important for the public to know what's happening with elected officials and what investigations are going on. So we do feel like it is a simple expansion, and we do support that. You'll also notice I'm sitting here alone, but Common Cause and the Public Justice Center also signed on to the testimony. Thank you. We urge a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. We'll take questions. Senator Folden, Snyder. Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill here on Senate Bill 145. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate anybody's support this weekend. Go Birds.
Okay, we're going to next stay with Public Information Act stuff, and we're going to go to Senator Augustine, Senate Bill 296. And Senator, I've got two designated panelists. Sarah Clem is here in person, and who else? Yeah. Can we just bring Rebecca Snyder's sound up favorable? Just come on up, and then virtually we do have Lisa Kirshner. We'll take her up next. So, Senator Augustine, Senate Bill 296.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. Senator Malcolm Augustine here asking for a favorable report on Senate Bill 296, Public Information Act, Public Access Ombudsman Delegation of Powers. Colleagues, in 2021, the legislature expanded the jurisdiction of the Public Information Act Compliance Board and integrated the operations of the Public Access Ombudsman and board. Since that time, the Ombudsman's caseload has increased significantly. In fiscal year 2024, the Ombudsman had a total of 636 matters that were before them, whereas in previous years, the number had been smaller. The previous year, 526. Despite the fact that under the new law, the Ombudsman generally must bring matters to a closure within 90 days. In fact, the Ombudsman is closing matters faster than in previous years. the month-to-month carryover number has hovered between 50 and 70 mediation matters, reaching a high of 87 matters in August of last year. Each mediation matter is different, and time from intake to closure values it takes different periods of time. Generally, outline of the work involved in mediation matters, well, I'm not going to get into all that, but I will tell you is that the Attorney General, with this piece of legislation, is saying, listen, they have this workload that they have, and what we would like to do is to just be able to provide a level of flexibility, which is not there right now, for the ombudsman to delegate some of the powers associated with the ombudsman to be able to do some of the work that is required. This would allow for the ability to move some of these cases forward a little bit faster. This is done in support with the Attorney General, and I'm going to ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 296.
Okay, thank you. We do have, we'll go to the Office of the Attorney General. Tell us who you are, and you're going to be on the 2.5-minute clock. Okay?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Clem. I'm an Assistant Attorney General in the Public Access Unit of the Office of the Attorney General. And in that role, I serve as counsel to the Public Access Ombudsman and the Public Information Act Compliance Board. As you all know, the Public Information Act is a law in Maryland that provides access to public records of state and local government agencies. And within that, the Ombudsman provides a very important service of helping to resolve disputes that can arise when people make Public Information Act requests. Since 2016, when the office was first established, there's only been one ombudsman, Lisa Kirshner, who you're going to hear from in a moment, who provides this service. And she's been very successful in resolving a lot of disputes, which keeps cases out of courts. And I think it helps the PIA work more effectively. It gets records that should be disclosed, and also can help educate folks sometimes on the limitations to disclosure. As Senator Augustine said, the Ombudsman's caseload has increased significantly over the years, and she needs help. And the Office of the Attorney General has provided an attorney mediator to come in and help manage that caseload. And all this bill does is make it explicit that the Ombudsman can delegate some of the tasks assigned to her, so conducting dispute resolutions, issuing final determinations, things of that nature, to staff of the Office of the Public Access Ombudsman. As her lawyer, I cannot assist with that. I can't assist with the programmatic duties of her office. So this bill is pretty simple. I think it would just promote the efficiency and effectiveness of her office. I think ultimately it will help make the PIA work better, and I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Snyder. And then after that, we'll go to our ombudsman, Ms. Kirshner, next. So, Ms. Snyder, 2.5 minutes.
Got it. For the record, I'm Rebecca Snyder, Executive Director of MDDC Press Association, and we do support this bill. As Sarah and the Senator have noted, Lisa Kirshner's caseload she's a victim of her own success in some ways, because the Office of the Ombudsman is being very effective and working with both requesters and custodians to make public records more available. And so we believe that this explicit delegation of powers of the Ombudsman is important to help the office run more smoothly, more efficiently, and move caseloads through the system. It's especially important for the press because we depend on the immediacy of records access to keep our timelines going. I'm speaking here, of course, on behalf of the Press Association, but you'll also note in testimony that the ACLU, the Public Justice Center, and Common Cause are also undersigned and fully support, and we all respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's go to the ombudsman, and then we'll take questions. Calling in, it looks like from the Bay Area, from San Francisco by the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. Ms. Kirshner, since you are the ombudsman, do you take the time you need to weigh in here? Okay? We'll not put her on the clock. Yeah, but you got to unmute yourself. You got to unmute yourself, Lisa. Oh, there you go. Okay, we hear you now. Go. Actually, maybe not. Is your volume down, off, kind of thing? No. Well, the good news is there's no opposition to the bill, so it may be, but that said, we'll give it 10 more seconds. If we can't hear you, you can send in some written testimony. Okay, try a little bit more. No? Ms. Kirshner, I think we're going to have to maybe move on. There are no other witnesses, and I think we've heard what we need to hear. You're overloaded and you need help. I think that's the message, okay? Okay, thank you. And that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 2. Oh, I apologize. I apologize. A premature moving on. Okay, Senator Carrozza.
Mr. Chair, and I tend to be supportive of this, but I did want to understand before we talk about, increasing delegation of powers, I wanted to better understand what was driving the PIA increase, if it was any one area, elected officials, law enforcement, certain departments. And since, as I recall, we increased budget and staffing for the Attorney General's office, I just was trying to better understand this request with the delegation of authority.
Thank you, Senator. So I think what's driving the increase in matters that the Ombudsman handles is the fact that in order to get to the Public Information Act Compliance Board, folks have to attempt to mediate their disputes first now through the Ombudsman. And so I think that's one factor that is driving the increase. But I also do think that, since 2016, word about this program has spread through the press community, through, just various agencies and custodians know about it as a way to try to address disputes outside of court without having to go through the court process.
But is it in any one area?
Oh, I don't think so. I think, I can't, unfortunately, I think Ms. Kirshner would have that more particular data.
There was legislation passed that significantly impacted law enforcement, and so I'm trying to better understand if that is tied to this increase of the PIA workload, and then again, I was also trying to tie the past increases of the Attorney General's office staffing and budget to this request.
Sure. So I can say that I think folks who request law enforcement records are frequent users of the program. I'm not sure it's fair to say that that is solely or significantly driving the increase, but that is certainly an area that the Ombudsman and also the Compliance Board encounter pretty frequently. And in terms of the Office of the Attorney General, our unit is very small. I am the only counsel in the unit. I'm the only Assistant Attorney General, and we have one administrator. Recently, the AG did approve us bringing on another contractual administrator because, with the caseload increasing, so has increased the administrative work as well. But that's it.
That's helpful to know, and I think maybe the Inspector General could answer my first question about the breakdown.
I turned my mic off by accident, Maureen. Can you turn it back on? I just would ask you also, Senator, to look to the fiscal note and note that there is not, they're saying, because this was at the request of the Attorney General, that they will be able to do this within their current cost structure. It's really just giving some authority to existing staff that doesn't able to do that in order to just be more efficient. That's my understanding. They just are trying to be more efficient. Right now, they're also trying to follow the law. That's what they do. They're trying to follow the law. So they're saying, hey, we really follow the law right now. We can be more efficient and still, do the right thing if we have a little bit more flexibility that would allow our staff to do some of these things. And in the end, it's just going to make it better for the people of our state without additional cost.
Since Ms. Kirshner couldn't get in, if you could just ask her, she may be hearing the testimony, if she wants to submit some written testimony in response to a few of the questions popped up, I think that would be good. Senator Gallion, you're good? Okay. Okay, I'll try again. That concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 296.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to move next. Thank you. I think we're going to move. Okay, I think Senator Kagan had to go. Well, she has hearing in another committee, but let's wait for her to come back in here. Well, she's got two bills, and see if Senator Kagan is out there, or she already left for another. Is she going to another hearing? Huh?
She just had to step outside for a sec.
Okay, well, we've got, okay, well, let's see. There she is, okay. Senator Kagan, Vice Chair Kagan, we've got two bills, Senate Bill 24 and Senate Bill 164, so you get to pick which one you want to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go in reverse order if we could.
Okay, we're going to start with Senate Bill 164. And Robert Phillips, is that Mr. Phillips?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're the only witness here in person. Senator Kagan, Senate Bill 164.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. This is the first of two, what should be pretty easy bills about words, because words matter. For many years, since 1893, MSFA meant the Maryland State Firemen's Association. And last year, at long last, the membership voted to change the meaning of their acronym to the Maryland State Firefighters Association. When I started working with these folks, we had three of our largest jurisdictions, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, and Baltimore County, all led by women fire chiefs. An increasing number of our firefighters are women, and they are just as effective and just as courageous. 45 states have already changed their names, and the International has long been the International Association of Firefighters. So again, last year they changed their name through a vote of the membership. They are in the code. And so Captain Phillips here asked me to put in legislation to officially change it in our law books so that it reflects the new name. So the only other thing I want to say is that it took several years, and our late colleague, Jimmy Malone, was a steadfast ally on this, and he was always supportive of our women firefighters. And so I want to give him a shout out, my friend in class of 94, Jimmy Malone. So we have lost him, but he gave his life to firefighting. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to my friend and colleague, Bob Phillips.
Okay, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Okay, go on, 2.5 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll make it shorter than that for you. I only have one thing. For the record, my name is Chief Robert Phillips. I'm a past chief from the city of Cambridge on the Eastern Shore. I'm also the legislative chair for the Maryland State Firefighters Association. I first met the senator here about 3 years ago, and she was interested in us becoming more relevant today and had a very good idea. And like she said, we're a corporation. We have to go through the steps and jump through the hoops. But this year, in June, we did change our name from firemen to firefighters. And I asked the senator if she would assist us with getting our name changed throughout the state. She graciously said that she would take care of it, and within about 15 minutes, she already had co-signers and extra people and across the aisle on the other side and the other house and everything else. My thanks to the senator, and I would ask that you be gracious with her and her bill with a favorable vote. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Senator Gallion.
Hey, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Chief and Senator. So I know this has been going around for a few years, and there was different talks of different name changes. Seeing that the majority of what we do in the fire service is EMS, and there's a lot of rescue, why stick with just the fire and not include rescue and EMS in the title? Is it just because the title be too long and it changes the 4 letters? I was just curious.
Okay, and a couple items that you just spoke about. Number one, our name has been, and it's been incorporated, our seal is MSFA. So we wanted to try to keep with that. The second thing is, if you take a look in the NFPA codes, the National Fire Protection, EMS comes under fire. EMS is a part of the fire department and the discipline. All firefighters are EMS people. That's number one. In order for us to be a certified firefighter, we also have to be certified in EMS. Until recently, we all had to be EMTs. Now they have changed that somewhat because we're supposed to take care of ourselves first and then everybody else. But fire has always been recognized under EMS. EMS has already been recognized under fire. Rescue also comes under the fire. If you take a look at the different functions of a fire company, rescue's listed under that. For these reasons, we tried to stay with the acronym and just put firefighters in there. It was much easier, sir.
Right, and I know
I can just add
in
one
Harford
thing.
County, when they changed it, it did make the name really long. It just went 8, it adds 2 more things. And so I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep. So our mutual friend here, Chief Brooks, was active up there and in Cecil County. Just to also add to everything that Chief Phillips says, is that there were a number of choices on the ballot a couple of years ago, including some of what you referenced, and ultimately the membership just decided to go with firefighters. Again, like 45 other states have been.
Okay, any additional questions? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on 164, Senate Bill 164. Senator Kagan, you can stay up there. Senate Bill 24, and you are the lone witness.
Thank you.
So you proceed. Senate Bill 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, colleagues. For the record, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. I think you all know that I'm very proud to call myself a grammar geek and a word nerd, and words matter. So this is the second of 2 bills that is really a verbiage update. There are 142 places in our code that reference the word church. So this proposes to change it to faith institution. It also, in 9 places, talks about clergymen, and so that would just say member of the clergy. And I think if any of you had a church, you would prefer not to have it called a synagogue or mosque, in the same way those who decide to pray at a synagogue or mosque or temple would prefer for it not to be referenced as a church. So very simple bill. Happy to take any questions. Hope you'll see this as favorably and move it forward.
Okay, questions for Senator Kagan? Yes, we've got Senator Simoner.
Just a quick question, and I appreciate what you're doing. I just quickly looked at it, and I'm just wondering about the consistency. Because I'm looking in public safety, and it strikes out church and calls it a place of worship, but in other places they call it a faith institution. So what's the distinction?
We had some of those questions as well, but we trust our bill drafters, and I'm happy to have another conversation with you if you like. But again, this is to remove references that are frankly outdated, inaccurate, and biased, as well as to get rid of the clergymen and just change that to member of the clergy to get rid of the gendered language.
Okay, we can talk offline on
Yep.
the church thing. And then just one other quick thing as I was looking at it. In corporations and association article, it defines faith institution.
Can you give me what page you're on, please?
Bottom page 5.
Yep.
And it defines it by using its same term, which is generally a no-no.
I agree with you. I don't like that, but it's also pretty common in the way we do things.
Okay, we can talk offline.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Carozza.
I just want clarification on your response. When you say bias, you're not alluding that using the term church was a bias in the
No, ma'am.
past?
The bias would be for clergyman, because there are clergy, members of the clergy.
Okay. Okay.
No.
It was more on the one reference.
There are 9 references to clergyman
Okay.
or clergy people. No, I just think it's inaccurate, and because there are a lot of faith institutions. And I think
Whenever
we
I
wanna
hear
be
the word
inclusive.
bias,
Now-
it's kind of a.
Fair. If I don't think I said that, if I did, then I apologize. That's not what I intended. I think it's just inaccurate.
Just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator Carozza.
Additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 24. We go next to Senator Simoner. Senate Bill, I don't know if I said House Bill, I meant Senate Bill. Senate Bill 57. Senator Simoner. You are the lone witness, at least in person. Okay, Senator Simoner, Senate Bill 57.
Thank you. And again, written testimony only was intentional.
There is no opposition to this bill as I worked with the stakeholders over the interim. I wanted to thank the Department of Veterans and Military Families for their support letter, along with the State Board of Morticians and Funeral Directors on this consensus legislation. So I've worked on this section back in 2021, so I was familiar with it. This section was updated last year, and because of the multi-departmental oversight, you have to update 2 sections of law, and they updated them both, but they didn't do them the same. So this basically puts the language in the posture where they're the same, dealing with transfer of unclaimed veterans remains, and also some terminology. So I'll just leave it. I can go into more detail, but it's basically a corrective bill.
Okay. Questions for Senator Simonaire on Senate Bill 57? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 57. We're going to next go back to you, Senator Simonaire, for Senate Bill 85.
And if I could have...
And yes, you've actually got David Lutzow from the Maryland Military Coalition here. Come up here, Mr. Lutzow. We've got Will Hendrick, Mr. Hendrick here. We do have virtually Harvey Guari from the Maryland Federation for the Blind. Mr. Hendrick is also from National Federation of the Blind, Maryland. So we'll take Mr. Hendrick up here, and then is Mr. Gary on the? Okay, we'll take our in-person witnesses first.
I'm fine.
Okay, so Senator Simonaire, we're on Senate Bill 85, and you're up.
Thank you very much. We also had a lot of written testimony. We didn't want to bring too many people here, but I did want to thank the Department of Veterans and Military Families for their support, along with the Department of Disabilities for their support as well. This is consensus legislation. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs estimates there are over 130,000 legally blind veterans in the United States, and more than 1 million with low vision that causes a loss of ability to perform necessary daily activities. This bill is called the Braille Flag Memorial Act, which honors our blind members of the uniformed services and other Marylanders through the placement of an American Braille tactile flag in one or more of our 5 state veteran cemeteries, as authorized by the Secretary of the Department of Veterans and Military Families. So what is an American Braille tactile flag? It's a tactile flag designed to use the sense of touch, allowing blind people to experience the American flag. This is not a flying flag, but an indoor plaque or outdoor American flag structure with Braille. This was modeled after the federal legislation that passed unanimously in Congress, which is quite a feat, to install a Braille tactile flag at the Arlington National Cemetery. The Arlington National Cemetery and many others have used the Kansas Braille Transcription Institute's Braille tactile flag. The founder designed the American flag to honor his father, who was blind during World War II, and allow all blind Americans and veterans to experience the American flag. The Kansas Braille flag has been endorsed by the Blind Veterans Association and is a beautiful way to honor our blind in Maryland. However, this legislation is drafted with flexibility, so the Secretary may install the Kansas Braille flag or a locally designed American flag or a combination at different cemeteries. The flexibility is up to the Secretary. The cost is minimal, but its significance is priceless. The state of Maryland is known as a state that recognizes the great contributions of our blind community and honors the dedication of our service members and veterans. Therefore, this legislation is fitting and meaningful. For all these reasons, I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you. Whoever wants to go next, why don't we go, we'll go to Mr. Hendrick. Do you want to testify next?
Sure.
Okay, and you've got 2.5 minutes, okay?
Good afternoon, Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. As a blind American and veteran, I've been non-sighted. Well, I was sighted a lot longer than I've been unsighted, and I say that because when you lose your sight, you kind of die a little bit. And what I mean is, a lot of things you usually can experience, something as simple as recognizing a flag, you can't do anymore. And so the significance of this bill is that it will allow me as a blind veteran to continue to participate in just living And to just note something as simple as noticing a flag and knowing what I'm actually observing is the significance of this bill for me. And saying that, I please ask that the committee vote yes, vote in favor of SB 85, and I thank Senator Simonet for sponsoring the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lutzow?
Afternoon, Chair. My name is David Lutzow. I'm representing the Maryland Military Coalition. I'm actually the youngest and newest member on the legislative team, and we submitted written testimony in favor of this bill. So I felt it's more important to pretty much put a face to the written name on the written testimony. The senator brought up pretty much every point that I was going to make in favor of our report. Just to emphasize, the 110th Congress, they got it right. It pretty much went through no oppositions at all with the language. And with the United States Congress, you know, that's almost impossible to do. With this topic, it was to them, the words used is pretty much as a no-brainer. Arlington has been there for 17 years now, 16 years. So I think state of Maryland needs to follow suit with their United States Congress, 110th Congress. They put this through. So that's why we're asking for, a favorable report for this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll take questions of the panel. We do have one virtual. Actually, let's just bring in the virtual witness, Mr. Harvey Gary, and then we'll take questions. He signed up favorable.
Video now. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gary, you hear us? Okay, you're
yes,
on.
I can hear you.
Okay, so you could proceed with your testimony, favorable testimony. Okay.
Yes, sir. For the record, my name is Harvey Gary, and I'm asking for a favorable vote for SB 85 to make Braille flags available at Maryland cemeteries. I was in the military from the Air Force from 1980 to 1987, where I was a material facility specialist, and I attained the rank of E5 staff sergeant. During this time, material facilities was a vital cog in the mission of the United States military. But unfortunately, I had an incident where I was declared legally blind in 2015. After that, I attended the VA Blind Rehabilitation Services, where I learned alternative ways to cope with blindness. Now, in 2015, that's when I was introduced to grade 1 Braille. And I went through grade 1, and at this time, I'm currently a Braille 2 student. So with that being said, my family knows how important Braille is to me, and continuing my life and to be able to be a little bit more independent. So I am asking for a favorable vote for SB 85 to make Braille flags available in veteran cemeteries. And I also would like to say that it would be a great honor to recognize the sacrifice that blind and low vision veterans had made in the sacrifice in serving this country. And this bill is also endorsed and passed by my local blinded veterans members at our low vision support group here in Baltimore. So this bill is, like I say, almost a no-brainer. And I thank you for listening to me. And once again, please vote favorable for SB 85. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just throw, Senator Simonet, I'm looking at an amendment that was proffered by Senator Hester. Have you all talked about it, an amendment? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. This is misreading this. Senator Simonet, you have an amendment. Do you want to describe this amendment? Okay.
Senator Hester was surprised.
Yeah, I apologize. She looked like she didn't know what I was talking about, which is understandable. Okay, Senator Simonet, what's the this amendment that you're proffering?
Yeah, that's just part of the whereas clause, and we're just recognizing the American Project flag organization. It's a nonprofit two blind veterans who have been pushing this across America to have the different places. So we just wanted to honor them in the whereas clause.
Any questions for Senator? We've got a veteran here of Vietnam. We've got Senator Ben Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I just want to thank Senator Simon there for bringing this bill forward. And I think it's I want to thank the two veterans too for their contributions to this country. I think it's a very small ask, and you've served your country well, and I think this is the least that we can do for you. So, thanks.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 85, and we're going to next move back to you, Senator Simon Ayer, for Senate Bill 153.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you'll find in the next couple bills, I provide all written testimony. Hopefully the committee will appreciate that, but there is written testimony for you to look through. This is Senate Bill 153. This one I didn't have any departmental support, but I wanted to highlight that Alan Lang is favorable on this bill. He was here all day yesterday, and I just wanted to recognize him. In 2023, we changed the name of this committee and the subject matter. Therefore, 3 actions need to take place. One was replace Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee to Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. There were over 50 references in law. The second thing was to update references based on subject matter. We have EEE material now under finance, and we have finance under EEE. We actually have some under B&T that have swapped. So those are taken care of. Also, we have an amendment for membership. Membership's changed, and I can go into detail, but I worked with the vice chair or the chair of finance and the chair of HGO that they would only like to have one member on a committee now based on the update of this. And so I put that in here as an amendment. And so there should be no opposition, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, questions for sponsor of the bill? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 153, and we're going to next move to Senate Bill 172.
Thank you. For the record, Senator Brian Simon Ayer, Senate Bill 172. Please look at your written testimony. It was intentional just to have one sponsor up here. There was no opposition. I worked with the stakeholders over the interim, and I want to thank the Department of Disabilities and the Department of Veterans and Military Families for their support letter on this consensus legislation. All this does is adds the Department of Disabilities to the Maryland Veteran Trust Board. Given their expertise and how many veterans have disabilities, it just seemed, as some people say, a no-brainer. And I work with both departments. They're supportive of it, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 172, which brings us back to you, Senator Simon Ayer.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 182, which is the final bill.
Yes. Senate Bill 182. Back in 2017, I sponsored legislation for the Maryland Veteran Service Animal Program. It's been going great ever since, and I want to thank the department and the nonprofits. They've done an amazing job and helped many of our veterans. Over those years, we have continued to grow this program. First, we started with service animals. Then we expanded to horse therapies to help veterans. And because we changed the title of the department last year to Department of Veterans and Military Families, we are expanding this to military families of veterans. This was coordinated with the Department of Veterans and Military Family and have their support. I could go into a lot more detail, but I will leave it at that and ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, any questions for Senator Simon Ayer? Okay,
see how fast we went through 5 bills?
Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 182. Concludes our